So yesterday I asked you guys to drop some questions you have currently about the Packers, and lots of you guys responded. I think there were 20 or 25 of you who asked questions, and I just wanted to pick the 5, I think, most interesting questions and go through each of those here in this video. So first off, starting off with miscellaneous etc. Thank you for your comment. They say this: given the uncertainty of Jenkins and Bakhtiari coming off serious knee injuries at such important positions, can our offensive line have enough depth to be great? Can the rookies contribute enough? We need them to be great this year. Makes all the difference. So that is a very good question, and I do think the injuries of Bakhtiari and Jenkins are one thing I'm a little worried about. You know, with Bakhtiari, we've talked about this in the past month or so, with him preparing to potentially be at training camp. We don't know if he's going to participate there yet. It seems like he should be good to go, but if we come to training camp and David Bakhtiari is unable to participate, that's when I'm going to be worried, and I think that even though Brian Gutekunst has done a lot to bring in lots of new players in this past draft, once again drafting 3 offensive linemen, if Bakhtiari is not available to start training camp, I think the Packers should question maybe coming in and getting some kind of veteran tackle or offensive lineman who could be out there somewhere. There's probably someone. I don't exactly know the options right now at this point. Because if we look back to last year, the signing of Dennis Kelly early in the season proved to be, I think, a pretty important signing just because of the injuries the Packers did suffer on the offensive line. And I do think players like Sean Ryan, offensive lineman drafted in the 3rd round, Zach Tom, another offensive lineman drafted in the 4th round, and Rasheed Walker in the 7th round. I do think those players can be good. The thing is with rookies, you never know how long it's going to take for them to get a grasp of things. So I only say if Bakhtiari isn't able to go, that's when I think we should come in and maybe grab some kind of other offensive lineman. If he's here in training camp, that's great news, and then hopefully Elgton Jenkins should be able to come in around, maybe a few months into the season. We'll see there, but there are some uncertainties with the O-line, but luckily we do have lots of rookies and lots of other younger players, so hopefully some of those guys will step up coming into this next year. Also, of course, Josh Nijman, who was pretty impactful last year in the time that he did play left tackle. Now moving on to the next question, we have Zachary Zabala. Thank you for your question. He says, do we actually think the defense will outperform our offense? And then how accountable should we hold Cobb, Watkins, Lazard, and Watson? So first off, if we take a look back to last year at the Packers offense and defense where they ranked, we were actually the 10th best scoring offense in the NFL and the 10th best scoring defense in the NFL. So just solely looking at that stat, the Packers offense and defense were pretty much exactly on par when it came to where they're ranked among the rest of the league. Pretty even. So now I think when you look at this Packers offense, losing Davante Adams, I think it could take a little time for the Packers to get their feet under themselves when the season starts and sort of figure out what they have there as Rodgers builds a chemistry with all these new receivers. And then I think when you look at the defense, just bringing everyone back, just the signing of DeAndre Campbell, Rasul Douglas, and then to add Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt in the 1st round from Georgia, I think that all those factors are going to lead to this Packers defense being so much better. With Jair Alexander last year as well, only playing in 4 games, this defense is going to take a huge step forward, and I think that they are going to outperform this offense. I think they'll be top 5, honestly, and I think the Packers offense will be around the same level as they were last year. Now moving on, we have Renard Fox says, who will have the better season, the most impact on offense, Allen Lazard or A.J. Dillon? So this is an interesting question, and I was having trouble going back and forth between both of these guys. I think when we look at Allen Lazard, there's no question with Davante Adams gone, he has the opportunity to be the number 1 wide receiver option. If we look back to last year with Davante there, he had 513 yards and 8 touchdowns, which is one of his best years so far. And so now with him being one of the players that Aaron Rodgers already has that trust in, with Davante and all of his targets gone, I think there's no doubt that Allen Lazard is going to take a huge step forward coming into this next season. And then if we do look at A.J. Dillon, last year had 800 rush yards, 300 receiving yards. They were both pretty impactful last year. A.J. Dillon had almost 500 to 600 more yards than Allen Lazard overall. So coming into this next season, I think it's going to be Lazard that is going to be more impactful, because if he does come in and be that number 1 wide receiver that I think the Packers think he can be, and that I think Aaron Rodgers thinks he can be, I think he will be more impactful overall than A.J. Dillon, because with the Packers splitting carries between Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, they're both crucial pieces, but they both sort of share the load. Doesn't mean I don't think A.J. Dillon's going to be a monster. He has been a monster, and if A.J. Dillon were to be the only back in this backfield, I think he would be, like, if you were drafting in fantasy football, I would probably want him as, like, one of my top running backs, top 5, top 10, if Aaron Jones wasn't there. But because, of course, they're both there, they split the load, and so it's going to sort of show that way. But I do think A.J. Dillon is pretty similar to how impactful he and Allen Lazard are both going to be next season. Then we have here from Gooseby. Thank you for your question. do you think Mason Crosby will be the starting kicker? So there has been lots of fluctuation when it comes to the backup kickers this offseason for the Packers. A few different guys who have been released. And then recently the Packers came in and signed rookie kicker Gabe Burkick, who was from Oklahoma. He was on the Vikings for a little while. They decided to waive him. And so I think even though Mason Crosby struggled a little more than he had in the past last year, I still think he is no doubt going to be the starting kicker unless there's an injury. I think that he has that job solidified when you have a veteran like Mason Crosby, who's been here in Green Bay for so long. He has the experience in those crucial clutch situations. You want a guy like Mason Crosby who's been there before and we know can get the job done in lots of different situations. So I think that Mason Crosby is going to be the kicker here this next season. Maybe he retires in a few years. Who knows? He is getting older. But I think this next season, Mason Crosby, I think he's a lock to be the starter. And then here to finish it off, we have from Killamel Gigi, should we get another secondary player or offensive lineman first? So this sort of goes back to the first point as we were talking about offensive linemen. I think that if David Bakhtiari isn't able to start in training camp and we're not sure what's going to happen with him, I think just to be safe, if there's an offensive lineman out there that Brian Gutekunst likes that he can get for a relatively cheap contract, similar to last year, bringing in Dennis Kelly, I think the Packers should do that because there's no question. I think the most important thing for this team is to protect Aaron Rodgers because if he is not protected and he's getting sacked, he has no time to throw. We don't want him to risk getting injured, and the more time he takes hits, clearly the more chance there is of an injury. And so I think that the Packers need to find someone to replace or just have more depth if Bakhtiari isn't able to go. I'm hoping he is because if he's able to go, I do think the Packers have enough around him to stay very good until Elgton Jenkins comes in a little bit later in the season, because we have Josh Myers at center who should be good to go. We have John Runyon, left tackle, left guard, Royce Newman, right guard, and then hopefully Josh Nijman at right tackle. So I do think the starting lineup looks pretty solid, even if Elgton Jenkins isn't back. And so if Bakhtiari is healthy and then Elgton Jenkins comes back, I think this O-line is going to be one of the best in the NFL once again. And then you have two of the rookies who I think could, as the season goes by, come in and become starters, maybe replacing Royce Newman, John Runyon, if they can outperform them. I think that's possible. But if Bakhtiari is healthy, I do think when we look at this Packers secondary, outside of the starters, there are some question marks about, depth because we're locked at cornerback when it comes to the top three positions, Rasul, Jair, Eric Stokes. Outside of those guys, there are lots of players who just don't have much experience whatsoever. We have Keyshawn Nixon out there who would likely right now looks like he would be the fourth cornerback. So I think that it could make sense for the Packers to come in, find some other kind of cornerback who maybe has a little more experience to bring in. Maybe they think they have enough with the guys already there, but we'll have to wait and see, I think, what happens when training camp comes around. And then safety as well. Outside of Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos at safety, there are some more question marks at depth there. So I think it could make sense to add another secondary player. But if I had to make a decision right now, I would say another secondary player just because I feel like Bakhtiari will be good to go. And I think the Packers could use some more depth in the secondary just because we know injuries happen. And so might as well be safe, pick up a guy there. That's all for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, if you want to see more Packers content, feel free to subscribe down below. And I'll see you guys next time.